Welcome back, everybody. It's Ben from the Ben and Bev channel. Today we're talking about the 5th and 6th episodes of the Book of Boba Fett series, so if you haven't seen up until this point,
spoilers.
So after the first few episodes of the series have been really convoluted in setting up the plot, especially with the different timelines that they're switching in between, episode 5 gave us a breath of that original Mandalorian energy as we get the return of the Mandalorian. And it's kind of weird about this episode is Boba Fett isn't really in it. This truly is just an update on what Mando has been up to since the events at the end of Mandalorian Season 2, and from this point on, it seems like it's about to function as Mandalorian Season 2.5.
And that's not a bad thing.
With both Episode 5 and 6, I think we get the strongest episodes of the series by far. Episode 5 really showed us what we've been missing from the original Mandalorian series, that hint of violence. I mean, Mando straight up cut people in half at the opening segment of this episode, which makes me really question why they haven't had Boba Fett go nearly as hard. I know he's grown as a person, he's become a more civilized individual since his time in captivity with the Tusken Raiders and learning more about what life means besides just being a really spiteful child growing up in rage inside of the Empire and the life of a bounty hunter in general. And though it's good to see character growth, it's been handled so choppily with the time jumps, and the characters that they've introduced really aren't that interesting. The backstory with Tatooine, the whole spice trade has all been kind of cheesy, and being as Dune came out just last year and is a really phenomenal film, all the little jokes about spice are kind of
not really landing for me. They're really gimmicky.
And though the Syndicate really comes into fruition in the 6th episode,
which just came out early this morning,
and they end up being more of a prominent threat with the way their actions are, it's not really worth it to add this detail in just to have a new central form of conflict in the last half of the series. Though the goal of the series so far has been to see Boba Fett established as the new daimyo and him go through the different trials and tribulations to get there and become this new level of power, there hasn't even really been a face of this villain for the entirety of the show until about this week's episode. We didn't really know who was behind everything. There was a whole bunch of different players, characters that they showed early on that we thought were going to be important were just mislead, which really caused this show to not have a drive. Both the return of the Mandalorian and his timeline, we feel a sense of drive again, thrown into the story right where we left off, as Mando has ventured with the Darksaber and moved forward and forward trying to track down his own kind, and when he finally reaches them, he's set up with a whole new set of problems to deal with. In fact, there's some major plot points that are probably going to be really important looking forward to Mandalorian Season 3 that are discussed in this episode, and some pretty significant changes do happen with this character, as well as the different challenges processed along the way, and
a matter of fact, even the ship change,
which isn't really that big of a spoiler, it's been posted everywhere. The Naboo fighter from the Phantom Menace has been repurposed for Mando and given a much bigger motor.
Even though nostalgia is just nostalgia for nostalgia's sake,
it's pretty sick, and I like the whole thing about the Jawas actually bringing the stolen parts to him to get it done. Just everything with the lore and Tatooine and its ecosystem is so interesting, but handled with a much less cluttered sense than with the episodes previous. It's almost like the show gains focus with the return of the entire extended universe's main character. As Mando's on screen, we stop with the flashbacks and we get a singular narrative that shows what he's been doing from point A to point B. There's loads of development, introductions of new characters, timelines, and setups. When we get to episode 6, we even get to see Grogu again, as well as the recently very improved CGI Luke Skywalker and even brief scenes with Ahsoka Tano. All of this Force stuff is really beneficial for the series as a whole because these two episodes are phenomenal. They're some of the best Star Wars things I've seen. They have everything about them that I love in Star Wars, the sense of amazement. They even bring back the original John Williams score at one point in the 6th episode, instantly pulling on the heartstrings.
How can you capture this on a serialized TV show for streaming only, but it's been hard for you to put this same exact feeling in the movies in the cinema?
Even the directors for these two episodes are from the Mandalorian's original tribe and not from the new set of directors. Bryce Dallas Howard on the 5th one and Dave Filoni returning for the 6th, and the narrative told between the two is absolutely phenomenal and actually ties into the Book of Boba Fett's narrative rather perfectly, and I like the way they also had a slight glimpse of the Cobb Vanth character and what he's been up to since then, and shows how the Syndicate's going to be affecting that part of Tatooine as well, which actually was a really successful way to set some interest up for this spice war that I otherwise wouldn't care about. The random gunslinger that shows up in the 6th episode with the red eyes and the blue skin.
A character that might mean something if I watched all of the extended universe stuff, but to me he wasn't really familiar.
Just the inclusion of everything in this episode on Tatooine being handled so well really shows the flaws with the earlier episodes in the series. Brings me to my one negative for both of these episodes. Despite them both being nearly perfect examples of Star Wars, they don't contain any Boba Fett. There is
slight amounts, like literally a scene in each episode with Boba Fett in it.
It's almost like with the details of his story, they didn't pay nearly enough attention because they knew that this is the end goal they wanted to get to. Which is all good and fun because these episodes are that good and it could save the series as a whole, but just the Mandalorian extended universe alone shouldn't be enough of a reason for this series to have existed. If you want to just put half of Mandalorian season in the last half of the season, you should have just told us that off the drop and dropped half of Mandalorian season. Or maybe find a way to retool the Boba Fett story where the flashbacks are just just in the first episode, or maybe just the first couple, instead of 4 straight episodes leading to a conflict that we're just delaying by giving us 2 great episodes of Mandalorian. It's a really conflicting set of emotions with this show. I mean, expectations for me weren't super high because I wasn't really anticipating it to be amazing, but the trailers made it look really good. But man, I expect more from Favreau and co. And if this is how all of the series are going to be handled, and now that I'm looking down the timeline of the series that are going to be coming out,
most of them are probably going to contain flashbacks. Obi-Wan, Andor, Ahsoka, those are all probably going to be very flashback-heavy series.
they're all handled with the sense of flashbacks like this one is. But despite there not being any Boba Fett present in these episodes, they are phenomenal Mandalorian episodes. Probably some of the better ones that we've gotten even out of the Mandalorian's own seasons. I think personally the Return of the Mandalorian episode that Bryce Dallas Howard directed really shows her talent behind the camera in this world of Star Wars. I was completely captivated when I saw that episode. There were scenes where just the lighting of the way that ring planet worked made absolutely no sense to me, but I could tell it looked real. The way it was rotating and the way that the ships passed by, the audio play.
Just the use of soundtrack again and again and again.
Also a very light sense of nostalgia. I mean, even though they're very heavy-handed with the characters that they're using, they're handling this so well within these episodes, and I'm mostly excited for the finale next week. There's a slight part of me that worries that the 2 stories aren't going to tie together that well, but they have now established the Syndicate with this episode as a very serious and interesting threat, at least.
Blue alien guy was creepy, okay? It worked for me. Lone gunslinger type, western nod.
What did you guys think of Mandalorian Season 2.5 in the middle of the Book of Boba Fett? Let us know in the comments below. We'll see you guys next time. Ben and Bev, out.